Hey, fifth graders, this is the third part of our Read Aloud Lunch Money by Andrew Clements. Make sure you're on page 490, that is where we're starting. And our learning goal for today is I can describe a character's personality using details from the text. So looking at our learning goal, we see the word personality. And what we're going to do by the end of the lesson is we're going to assign Greg a personality trait or character trait using fifth grade language, and I have this anchor chart here that we'll refer to. Now, before we start our lesson, make sure you have your journal out, your reading journal, and set up your notes that we're going to take. So your notes are going to look something like this. On one side, at the very top, you're going to put Greg's thoughts, words, and dialogue. And on the other side, you're going to have inferences and what this tells me. And you'll have a line going straight down. And this is exactly what we used yesterday. So we were practicing yesterday, and we caught a few details in the text. And we're going to take it a step further. And I'm going to have you guys do it now, mostly on your own. I may refer to some details I catch, but hopefully you guys are going to be able to jot down those notes all on your own. Now I want you to mostly look at the thoughts, words, and dialogues as we find the details, and we'll focus on inferencing later at the end of the lesson. Okay, so get your pens or pencils ready in your journals. I'm going to go ahead and start reading, and hopefully you guys can follow along on the thoughts, dialogue, or actions, whatever the character might be doing or saying. Okay? After all, the hows had been settled. Then came the writing. But Greg hadn't written just one story. He had developed a master publishing plan. Volume 1 was going to be about Creon, an incredibly intelligent Stone Age hero who helped his tribe deal with ancient dangers, like prehistoric beasts and Cro-Magnon Mardors. Mardors is like a mythological creature that was created during the Greek ages. Greg figured there could be 7 or 8 issues about Creon. Chunky Comics Volume 2 would feature the future, where a superhero named Eon tried to protect a small colony of humans living in a world of meeting ice caps and mutant life forms that were part human, part toxic sludge, and part recycled trucks and airplanes. Again, there would be 7 or 8 issues featuring Eon. Okay, so I caught a few details that I could write in my notes, and that's Greg. It's that Greg likes to make up interesting characters. He's made up interesting characters about Creon, about having multiple characters in the Chunky comic books, and he has another superhero named Eon and Leon. And you can see that also in the text down here, the illustrations. So I have a question to ask you. What do you notice about the story's illustrations? What do they help you understand about the story and the main character? I want you to stop that and discuss that with your learning coach right now. What's it called? Okay, so hopefully you've caught the one detail I brought up and you wrote that in your notes. And we'll come up with the inferences after this read aloud. Okay, right now we're on page 491. Let's keep reading. Then, Chunky Comics Volume 3 would feature Leon, a fairly normal modern age techno dude, who suddenly finds himself energized when his digital atomic watch overheats and burns in circuits into the nerves of his wrist. Leon learns that the watch can be set for the future or the past. The 6th or 7th time travel adventures of Volume 3 would follow Leon to the past, where he would team up with Creon, and then to the future, when he would offer his services to the amazing Eon, and eventually all three characters would have some final episodes together. Creon, Leon, and Eon, past, present, and future. Once the master plans was set, writing the first Creon story, Return of the Hunter, had been pretty easy for Greg, but the drawing was more difficult than he'd thought it would be. It had taken a long time to get each small page looking just the way he wanted. It wasn't like doodling or sketching. These pictures had to be good enough to sell. Okay, so it seems like Greg wanted to make sure his comic books were made perfect. Can you think of a time or share about an instance where you wanted to have something become so perfect, or you wanted to master something and not have any mistakes? I want you to go ahead and reflect on that with your learning coach. Okay, so hopefully you caught that other detail on page 491. If not, you can rewind this video and play it back again. So you should have at least 2 notes down now in your journal. Alright, moving on to page 492. When both covers and the 14 inside pages had been drawn and inked and pasted in place to make the 2 master copies, Greg tackled his first printing. The copier he used was his dad's, and it was actually part of the printer that was hooked up to the computer in the family room. It was an inkjet printer, plus a scanner, plus a copier, one of those all-in-one machines. It made copies in either black and white or color. Greg had stuffed about 40 ruined sheets of paper into the recycling bin before he had figured out how to get all 16-page images copied correctly onto the front and back of one sheet of paper. Alright, so I'm catching a detail here that Greg seemed to make mistakes with making his comic books. So he didn't really master the printing right away. And I see that proof in the part where it talks about how he stuffed about 40 ruined sheets of paper into the recycling bin. So figure out where you are going to put that in your notes. But finally, he had folded his first perfectly printed sheet, stapled it twice, and trimmed the top, front, and bottom edges. And then, one hot night in the middle of July, Greg stood there in his family room and thumbed through the very first volume of Chunky Comics. Thumbed means he flipped through it. So Greg stood there in his family room and thumbed through the very first volume of Chunky Comics. It had been a proud moment. You know, this makes me think about a time where I made a lot of mistakes and I just kept practicing to help make everything perfect. So why do you think the author used such detail to explain how the comics are made? And what do these details reveal about the main character? Okay, I want you to reflect on that with your learning coach. Again, why do you think the author used details to explain how the comic books are made, and what do these details reveal about the main character? Let's review our learning goal. I can describe a character's personality using details from the text. So you guys should have went through your notes and tried to pinpoint some of the details you notice in the text. So look back over your notes. Look at what you jotted down on the portion of Greg's thoughts, words, and dialogues. And now what you're going to do is make inferences and jot down on the right what this tells me about the character based on his thoughts, words, and dialogue. Now, for your ticket out, like I said, we're going to use this personality trait anchor chart to help us formulate an inference about our character. And you could actually use this to make your inferences in your notes as well. So, let me show you an example of what you need to do for your ticket. So from yesterday's notes and read aloud, we jotted down how Greg takes care of his dad's comic books. So I would go ahead and use this character trait and look up any word that I could describe him based on that fact. So I'm going to use the word responsible, and that's under the positive section of the character trait charts. I'm going to say that he's responsible. So for me to write it down, I would say, I think Greg. Okay, so the fact that I found in the text was that he takes care of his dad's comic books, and the personality that I'm going to assign to him is responsible. So I would write down, I think Greg is responsible. I think this because in the text it says how Greg took care of his father's comic books. Now with your ticket out, go ahead and use your notes from today's section of the story that we read. Use your notes from page 490 to 492 and formulate your response. I think Greg is blank. Okay, that's where you're going to put your character trait in that blank. I think this because blank. And in that blank, that's where you're going to put the proof you found in the story. Okay, so that's your ticket out, and that concludes our read aloud for lunch money.